And welcome to a very special episode of the Zero Technique Football Podcast, brought to you by backsportspage.com. Joining us today is one third of the immensely popular award winning podcast, The Fantasy Footballers. He is the one with the cool tattoos, he's the one with the cool hair, he's the one with the awful takes on Thanksgiving. It's Mike, the Fantasy Hitman, Wright? Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you for bringing me on. I was still jamming to that hot tune. that intro, man. Whew, that was a little funky.
I mean, I needed to bring out the best for you.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope that was a one-timer. That was the only time you're ever going to use that theme song. You've never used it before, and you'll never use it again.
Sure. We'll roll with that.
I'm going to check.
Okay.
And I will never come back on this show.
To be honest, that was actually the second time that one has ever been used, and I may just have to retire it after.
All right. Well, last time. No,
all right.
I mean, no, but I'm serious. Don't ever play that song again.
You got it. First off, like I said, I wanted to thank you guys for being able to put out the quality and quantity of shows that you were able to put out despite everything that went on over the past year plus now. What was the hardest part about adapting to the new way you guys needed to record, and how were you guys so successful in continuing to put out the quality of shows you've always been known to put out?
I would say the hardest part was not done by me or any of the guys. Al Borland, one of our producers, Jeremy Grantham, is an absolute just sexy beast when it comes to tech, and he is incredibly meticulous, and he like the production of the quality of the show was kind of started with me. Not that the other guys cared, but I had the audio background, so I had got us to a certain level, and we brought Jeremy onto the staff eventually, and he shares my passion for making sure that our audio quality is as good as a network or possibly better. I mean, hopefully better than the network. So he worked out a huge system, got everything set up for us when we did make the decision to go remote. Which I mean, that was weird, man. It went from kind of just like the rest of the country of like we're talking about, numbers are. This is starting to look a little bit weird. What are we going to do? Maybe we should think about doing remote for a little bit, and then we're full-time remote. But Jeremy got us all rigs at home. He would do a bunch of extra editing on his side because of how the recording process had to go. So I mean that was the hardest part, is him doing that for us. But interacting with each other over the Zoom, going virtual, we at least had a very large background of being friends for a long time, having done so many shows together. We already know how the other person acts, so the stepping on each other that naturally happens when you're talking with someone through online. It definitely happened. We're not saying we were completely flawless, but because we already had a natural chemistry built in, I think that it eliminated a lot of that compared to some other people who didn't have the luxury of history like the things that we had. So those were the big things, and then just freaking out daily that the NFL was not going to happen, and what are we going to do for a year? But football happened. We got to stay around, and it worked out, thankfully, for our company.
So I guess what was the process of, going through your head when there was so much question about whether or not there was going to be NFL played in 2020? How much did it affect what you guys did in terms of putting out content and also with your rankings?
Sure. So we stayed the course, and the decision was the NFL is saying they're going to play. They're not giving any hesitation. They're saying we're going to figure it out. So we need to put our content out as if they are going to play. We can't hedge, like we're going to pull some content back here. It was everything is regular for us. It's an abnormal circumstance where everybody's at home, but we're still going to put out the exact same amount of shows. We're going to be on schedule. We had deals with advertisers anyways, so that we have to put out content to fulfill those contracts. make sure that able to eat, everyone's able to pay their mortgages and all of that stuff. But it was just move forward and deal. I mean, there was definitely wild emotions of being 100% sure that the NFL is going to figure it out. They can't be stopped. They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They're going to figure it out. To the next day, just full panic of there's no way they could possibly figure this out. Yeah, they're going to have to shut everything down. This is everything was terrible. So I mean, wild pendulum swings on a day-to-day basis, an hour-to-hour basis that was put a few extra gray hairs into my beard throughout the summer. And then in terms of rankings, I mean, like I said, just it was full systems go. For rankings, something that did change it was the preseason was gone.
Right.
So that was really bizarre in the ramp up, that normal rhythm of your life of August is here, preseason's going to hit. I'm getting more and more excited for football as we go, and then boom, the big payoff, you get the kickoff, and you didn't have a chance to look at rookies. You were in the dark, and so I mean, we're just taking bigger shots, not necessarily bigger, but more, far less aimed shots of trying to read through, because even reporters couldn't even really go to training camps. You didn't have the normal coach speak. You didn't have the normal reporter fodder coming in on Roto World every 5 seconds. You didn't have the preseason games to have a player hit an explosive play and throw their ADP up 3 rounds, just the normal fun stuff that happened. So it was a little bit of a challenge having to deal with that, but it's still fantasy football where you're taking a lot of the shots in the dark anyways.
Yeah, I know. It ended up being one of my least successful years because I was so hesitant about taking those shots on the rookies because, and especially with the rookie wide receivers who we saw a lot out of, but usually the rookie wide receivers it takes them a little bit more time to get acclimated to the NFL. And then we had a limited training camp. We had no preseason. I was really down on the rookie wide receivers last year. What did last year's rookie wide receiver success do to maybe change how you rank rookies going forward?
It's going to change nothing for me.
Okay.
There are ebbs and flows. There are years like this. I think it was the 2014 class. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was the Beckham, Mike Evans. I mean, those guys came out, and there was a massively successful rookie wide receivers, especially for fantasy football. People buy in. They get hosed because they go all in on rookie wide receivers. I'll take the larger historical sample that it takes rookies a while to really pay off. I think a big difference, number one, you had a lot of really good, talented wide receivers that were being touted for years before they actually got into the NFL. But we saw this. We saw a similar trend back. I can't remember the year, but the year that the league almost went on strike because they couldn't get a collective bargaining agreement. So it cut training camp short. It cut a lot of the off-season programs, and you saw an offensive explosion that year because it's much harder to play defense than it is to play offense, and then you're just always playing catch-up, trying to get these guys in sync. That happened again. We saw massive, massive offensive production, and so I'm not going to let the one-year sample size skew how I feel about these rookie wide receivers. Some of them, I like them. I'll go in on them. Like Chase Claypool was a guy I was very interested in. Now, unfortunately, he was great, and then he was terrible for like half the season. But I'm not going to draft him. I let rookie wide receivers go a couple weeks. They usually get drafted and then dropped onto the waiver wire, or I'm going to make a trade, a low offer trade that because they haven't done anything yet. I'm still going to stay that course. I'm willing to take the L on the rookie wide receivers last year. It was part of the crazy 2020.
All right, let's go back to the beginning. You and Andy start the podcast for your league mates.
Yes.
Did you ever envision it getting anywhere close to the popularity it's risen to? And if you could go back and tell the Mike that's doing the first version of the podcast something, what would you tell
Uh, well, in terms of did we think it would become this? No. I, anyone who's starting a podcast that I mean, well, maybe now because people there you have us and you have some other like podcasts that it's their full time job. But back when we started, I mean, no, independent people didn't run podcasts as a job. You did it; it looked like fun. Maybe you got a little bit of cool clout in the industry, but it wasn't a job, and it wasn't what it was. No, the dreams that I could have had back then would have failed in comparison to what this company has been able to turn into with not just the three of us taking care of our families. We have several full-time employees that we take care of them. We take care of their families, and we have just this incredible work environment. So there's no way we could have imagined this. What would I tell myself? I would say you could more just like, hey, tell your wife with confidence, we're gonna be okay. Jumping into trying to start a fantasy football podcast after just being laid off of your job and having 3 kids and moving into a brand new house with a brand new baby, and you're like, this is what we need to do. Is I'm going to try and talk about fantasy football for a living. So I sold her on it, but if I would have known, I could have sold it with a little bit more passion, more confidence in my speech.
All right, I want to get to know the Mike Wright, the musician. Who were your musical heroes? Who were your biggest inspirations behind the music that you had and you still do create?
Sure. So I've been a lifetime musician. Like my parents started me on the piano when I was young. Eventually, I was able to. I was just one of the kids who I hated piano lessons so very, very much. And I would complain about it, and eventually I complained my way out of it. And now you look back, like, you should have kept me in piano lessons. Why'd you let me quit? And you're like, well, because you were the worst. Of course we let. But then I did some school band. I played trumpet and baritone for a couple years.
Saxophone.
There we go. There we go.
In fact, I in the 3rd grade. I started with the cello. Because
really?
Because I did not want to play the violin, and you couldn't play a wind instrument until 4th grade.
Interesting.
So I started off with the cello, and then once I could get to a wind instrument, it was all about the saxophone. And I played all 4, from soprano, alto, tenor, baritone, all into college.
That's fantastic. I wish I could play a violin. That's one of the instruments I actually wish I could make it do something. And then in the reason I went with the trumpet, that's classic contrarian Mike, where band is starting up, they're trying to get everyone interested, everybody wants to play the saxophone, everybody, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna go play the trumpet then, because you're all just a bunch of sheep falling in line. You all want to go play your saxophones. So that's how I ended up on the trumpet. But junior high, in contrarian mode again, everyone's playing the guitar. I'm like, well, I'm going to play the bass then. Okay. It's good for job security because everyone's trying to start a band. No one has a bass player. I'm like the only band. So I could have played in any band that I wanted to, any garage band. And eventually I did start playing the guitar so I could do writing stuff. But in terms of like what set the foundation for my musical taste, growing up, my parents love Barry Manilow and B.J. Thomas, so I listened to those guys a lot. We listened to a lot of the oldies on the radio, so that was the foundation of music me learning about music. Once you play guitar in high school, you have to get into Metallica. It's in the Constitution. You can go look it
Absolutely.
up. You have to do it. So I became a massive, massive Metallica fan. Eventually got into punk rock, where like NoFX is still my favorite band. I can throw them on anytime, and I'm good with it. But so little punk rock and pop punk, I'd say that shaped most of what I like, and that's the stuff that I can still go back into. I didn't become a metalhead. I just became obsessed with Metallica. So, like, I guess I listened to a little bit of Korn, but like Pantera, Soulfly, like all the big bands at this. I wasn't into all of them. I was very judicious in the metal music that I actually liked. But punk, man, I would take in as much of that as I possibly could. Eventually get into indie rock, like before they became very popular, but Modest Mouse, and there's this band called No Knife, and if you've never heard of No Knife, you can go check them out. They really only have like 3 or 4 records, but they really shaped. They changed how I looked at music and how I looked at the guitar, because they would always have. They're very melodic, but a lot of close tension notes and things that you don't realize you can do, right?
Right.
Because when you're just screwing around, you're like, oh, that's terrible. And they're like, no, actually, check this out. You can make this very musical. So that was that's a quick cliff notes of me growing up and experiencing music.
Yeah, so I was brought up with the oldies. I mean, my father grew up on the same street as Frankie Valli,
Okay,
so
nice.
I'm well versed in the oldies. But then again, we're about the same age, so Korn. You mentioned Korn.
Yeah.
I was one of those guys who would wear his Jinkos, and
Oh man, I had the
yeah,
Jinkos
the
for sure.
had to have them. But there was also this one kid who, I guess he was paid to hand out demo CDs,
Okay.
and he was really into this band that was called Hybrid Theory,
Okay, I've
and
heard of them.
yeah, because they ended up becoming Linkin Park.
Yep.
And so I was actually really into Linkin Park even before that they had changed their name to Linkin Park. And I mean, they were probably one of my bigger, more modern inspirations.
No, the first Linkin Park, the
Yeah,
as
Hybrid
the
Theory.
Hybrid Theory, because they changed their name from that, and they made it the name of the record. Yeah, that CD is fantastic. That
Yeah,
whole album from start to finish is incredible. And the unfortunately the late Chester,
yeah.
he's an Arizona guy. Like, we knew of Chester before
Okay.
he kind of made it big with Linkin Park.
Okay, this will be the first keep trade cut of the interview.
Okay. Oh, the
Keep
first of many.
the first, yeah, the
Okay.
first. I've got a couple planned out. So, keep trade cut, and I guess maybe this. I thought you were more guitar than you were bass, so I had it planned out.
You're good, man. Don't worry.
Bass, drums, and keyboard.
Okay. Oh, okay. Which one? Oh, that's easy
Yeah,
then. I'm keeping the bass because bass it's still my favorite instrument to play.
okay.
The keyboard is just so versatile, and as I worked for the video game company, so back when Jason was my boss, I had to like reteach myself how to do the keyboard, and I had learned how to do MIDI and software instruments and all that stuff. It's so versatile what you can do, but it's not a fun instrument for me to play. The end result is fantastic, but playing the drums, I'm not a good drummer. I can make it happen,
Same.
but I'm not a great drummer. But playing the drums is very, very fun. So I got to keep the bass. Oh, but no, I'm trading.
Yeah.
I'll trade the keyboard. It has far more value, and drummers are stupid people anyway. So I'll cut the drums.
Oh, there's the famous joke. How do you get a drummer to play softer? Put sheet music in front of them.
Yeah.
All right, and you had mentioned video games, so it was a perfect segue for the next question that I had. So, I mean,
Perfect.
as I've gotten older, the less obsessed with video games I've gotten. But when I was younger, oh boy, could I waste an hour or 10 playing NES.
Sure.
What would you say entertained you more, playing NES as a kid or playing PS5, Xbox One, or on a computer now?
Oh, it's NES. It is
Okay.
not even close. But I mean that also has to do with where your stage in humanity. I mean, you're a kid. Things are bigger. Things don't like You aren't cynical yet, Ellie, and the world of wonder and exploration of what those games meant. Yeah, back when you would sit down and play the NES, and you could sit down. This is more like PlayStation, I guess, of what I'm thinking of an RPG. But I would lose myself in an RPG like the Final Fantasy games, where I would name everybody, like my friends' names, the love interest. I would name it whoever the girl I had a crush on at the moment, and I would try and woo her, in the game, and like that would be my focus. So I would go way back. I mean, I'm having fun playing games when I have the chance now, like you, that where the time to actually play video games is very small,
Yeah.
few and far between when I actually get to sit down and play. But those times, man, where I was a kid, and the whole thing of getting a new game back then it was just such a magical moment where you got $50 or whatever, your birthday money, you pool it all together, you got your what you saved from Christmas. You're like, I get to go buy a game. You have no idea what's going to be good because the internet doesn't exist yet. Video games don't exist. The only thing you have to go off is Nintendo
Magazines.
Power, and
Yeah.
Nintendo Power is put out by Nintendo, so they're just
Right.
trying to sell you Nintendo games. Of course, they're going to tell you every game is good, but you go and you're like, I like the picture on this box. I'm feeling good about this one. That's what you would buy it. You'd spend
Absolutely.
$50 on it because you liked the picture, and then you'd go home, and it would probably be just a terrible, crappy game. Because if you go back and play Nintendo games, 95% of them are just hot garbage. But back then, it was the
It
greatest
was great.
thing ever.
3 most underrated NES games.
Oh my goodness, 3 underrated NES games. I mean, I feel like I would have to pull up a list. Let me. So I don't know. I can only go off of the games that I had in underrated. Marble Madness is incredible, and it's Marble Madness is a game that when you're young is impossible. It's impossible to beat it, and then once you actually get good at video games, you realize you beat that game in 5 minutes, which is that's a really fun realization once you get to the age where you're actually good at video games. Man, underrated though. They were all just so hard. I enjoy Back to the Future had almost nothing to do with the movies,
Right.
but it had a bunch of mini games in it, and you got to if you didn't play if you didn't play Back to the Future, the whole concept of the game is it's a vertical scroller, and you're Marty McFly, and you're trying to get through the levels, so you can pretend you're in the movie, and the longer you stay alive, you are then rewarded with a weapon to attack, and it's a bowling ball, and now you fire bowling balls, and then if you stay alive a little bit longer, then you get a skateboard. So now you're on a skateboard throwing bowling balls at people, and your biggest nemesis is a bee. Like once the bee gets on your track, this thing just keeps following and looping around you till you inevitably die, or you hit it with a bowling ball, because that's what we did with NES games back in the day.
Right.
But I mean, it's hard to think of an underrated game. But all the big ones, Mario 3. I did like Mario 2, which it seems to be a hot take with some people. But I mean, Mario 3 is probably still underrated.
It was my,
even though
it was
it's
my
recognized.
favorite of the 3.
It's so freaking good.
Yeah.
And still holds up.
There was a game that me and my next door neighbor played for hours on end called Bubble Bobble.
Bubble Bobble is fantastic.
I probably played Bubble Bobble more than I played any other NES game. Maybe Mega Man 3.
Oh yeah, I didn't get super into the Mega Mans. Mega Man 2 would have been the one I played the most, but Bubble Bobble, Oh, I was all about that life where you uh when you beat the game and you didn't actually beat it because you didn't find the secret door to
Right.
go to the extra levels, but the oh man, yeah. Now I'm there, man. Now I'm there. I'm reliving it of when you beating the boss where you gotta stack up
Yep.
the lightning bubbles so you can hit him 1,000 times. Oh, Bubble Bobble was fantastic.
All right. Second keep trade cut.
Okay.
These or these franchises, not NES, but video game franchises.
Okay.
Mario, Sonic, Final Fantasy.
Uh, Sonic is a pretty easy cut for me, even though I was regrettably, uh, I was pushed into Sega. So the 16-bit era, I did not own a Super Nintendo.
Me neither.
I played a ton of it, but I ended up with a Genesis. I mean, it was still great. So I don't want to crap on the Genesis, but the Super Nintendo was just so much better. And I never liked. Never. That's a little strong. Sonic 2 and Sonic Spinball, I got into those. But overall, Mario is a much better version of a platformer than Sonic. So Sonic is the easy cut. Now, do you keep Final Fantasy? That is that's a tough one because like so you have Super Mario World and Mario 3. You have some of the best games ever, but Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 8, like one of my hot takes for Final Fantasy, I don't know if which I put out there from time to time, is Final Fantasy 8 is my favorite one, which
Yeah.
is a blasphemous statement for a lot of people because it's just automatically 7. But I took that thing to the limit, man, where you it gives you your time played. And I mean, I had this thing up into 80 plus hours by the end of it. So I'll keep that one just for the nostalgia of those games and what they meant to me at a particular time in life where I really needed those games. And like Mario's are fun, but Final Fantasy like had actual emotional impact on me and growing up and storytelling and stuff. So I'll keep Final Fantasy. I'll trade Mario, and Mario's super valuable.
Oh, absolutely. All right. So I know on the Footcast, you guys at the end always have a little bit of a rapid round. This will be more football based. So,
All right.
all right. Favorite drop that you've done for the show?
My favorite drop is the "You Want to Play a Game" drop, which was it's great. It's just it does exactly what it needs to do. And the guys, I don't know if they remember, they hated it at the beginning, and I just kept making them use it. And I was like, it's great, man. But now it's part of the lore of the footballers. Oh wait, we've got it. Hit it.
I want to play a game.
It's so good. It's erratic. It's intense. Then you get the voice of Jigsaw. It's the best.
Favorite nickname that you guys have come up with?
I think my favorite nickname would be Darren the Walrus. But the Kristen Michael, when he was the woke one, that was the most fun that I've had with a nickname.
So I actually just started in a Dynasty startup league with a bunch of Foot Clan members.
Oh, very nice.
That we join on footclanleagues.com. My team name is I Am the Walrus.
Excellent.
All right.
But is Waller on your team?
I'm probably gonna have to change it because
You can't name yourself after a player if he's not on your team.
I know.
That's bad form.
All right, so you and I are both really, really, really big Najee Harris fans.
Yes.
Perfect landing spot for Najee
Arizona Cardinals.
for fantasy purposes.
Yeah,
Still Arizona?
Yeah, well, Arizona would be the best spots to me are Miami and Arizona. Miami might be a little bit better because the commitment to the workload might end up a bit higher there. But Arizona is a much higher powered offense, and if you look at how many opportunities Drake had to actually score and just failed, I mean, if you turn those into you bump up the success rate just a little bit, and Drake would have been a monster, and Najee would succeed where Drake has failed.
So I mean that's going to wrap it up.
All right.
I really can't express how, I guess, proud, lucky. Lucky is a word.
Very lucky.
But I am truly lucky and honored to have you on the show. Again, make sure that you got at FF Hitman. Follow the Fantasy Footballers on Twitter. Make sure you're downloading the podcast. If you want to give any plugs out.
Man, that's good. Just follow me on Twitter, Instagram. FF Hitman is exactly the same, but that's it, man. Hey, I appreciate it. We are the lucky ones that get to do this for our job, and we wouldn't get to do it without like passionate, hardcore listeners and fans of the show. So I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you so much. And again, make sure you're following me on Twitter at rstern33, and you're checking out at Backsports Page on all social media. Go to backsportspage.com for all of the great content and web shows that we got going up. Mike, thanks again for your time.
You got it, man. Thank you.